Welcome to America's Top Rebbetzins. May this class be for Refuah Shalema for Daniel Ben Ilana. I'm happy to have on our show today Rebbetzin Rachel Tessler Lopatin. Rebbetzin Rachel grew up in West Bloomfield, Michigan, and has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Judaic Studies from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in social work from Columbia University. When she was living in Chicago, Rebbetzin Rachel was involved in the creation of the Lakeview Mikveh and the Chicago Jewish Day School. Rebbetzin Rachel currently lives in Detroit, Michigan, and is a matchmaker, bringing people together through sites like Saw You on Sinai and Why You Connects. That sounds fun and exciting. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So my husband is a rabbi, and when we lived in Chicago, we were part of Lakeview, which is a wonderful community. And there were a lot of singles there, a lot. And there were always people coming in for residencies and clerkships and internships. And so we had a lot of turnover and a lot of people who stayed, and there were just always new people. So we used to do a lot of hosting, and we would probably have like 20 people planned, and then my husband would bring home another 6 to 8 each week from shul. He'd walk around, and they'd have a hospitality committee that would say, like, they would say, do you have a place for Shabbat dinner? And I mean, everyone had food. It wasn't that people didn't have food. It's people didn't know people and said, yeah, I'd love to come for a Shabbat dinner. So our table was very long, and it ended up, my husband would sit at one end and I would sit at the other. And at his end, I don't even know what they talked about because it was his end. And my end was inevitably a bunch of singles. And I would say we always tried to have like a mix at our Shabbat table of older people, younger people, couples, singles, families. We just always felt like we should be building community around our Shabbat table. But at my end, inevitably, for Shabbat dinner, were always singles who, and we had some regulars, those who came every week, and they would talk about their dating escapades of the week since the last time we had been together. And basically, they had said, Rachel, you have to be a matchmaker on this website, Saw You at Sinai, because you know us, and it's better to have someone looking for us who actually knows us, and you also understand. It's a modern Orthodox community, so I understood a lot of the subtleties of being modern Orthodox. And so I got involved in matchmaking through that way. I mean, I had always, loved making matches when possible, and we had a bunch that resulted from our Shabbat table. And so I got in touch with Saw You at Sinai, and so I've been a volunteer matchmaker with them, for them since then. And I think meeting people at a Shabbat table is the best way to meet people, or in natural, organic ways. But I think through Saw You at Sinai, I get a bigger platform of connecting with people. So I usually know the people that I am looking for. I don't always know the people that I'm finding, but through references or checking, you're supposed to list your rabbi, and through Facebook, and I can connect with people to just kind of say, like, tell me a little bit more about this person. Would you fix them up with your sister? Would you, a lot, I think, is chemistry, but sometimes I just want to know, like, give me a sense of this person. So I do a lot of connecting. So I've been doing that volunteer since then.
That's amazing. And how many shidduchs have you made approximately?
So it's a challenging question to ask. I have, I think, 14 marriages that I know of.
Wow.
But I do believe, or at least this is what I tell myself, is that I am constantly, I use the term like stirring the pot. And I feel like whenever you introduce people to people, and I tell people this when they're going out on a date, and unless the person is rude or nasty, if there's no chemistry, and I say even give it a second date, but if there is really no chemistry, then think, okay, you know what, who in my world do I know that I can connect this person to? Or, you know what, there was no chemistry, but I'm doing a Shabbat dinner, I'm going to invite her, and I'm going to invite him. And, and then, so I believe that I have a lot of couples that have resulted from introducing people, even if those people didn't match. I believe that I have to believe at least that there is a lot of good that comes from introducing people and, getting people to kind of broaden their world and broaden their network.
For sure. Oh, definitely, for sure. I mean, it's such it's such an intricate science, matchmaking, to pair this person with that person. Do you have like any secrets? I'm just curious now that you're talking about and thinking about, like, how do you know? Because I mean, like, if I wanted to do it, I would have no clue where to start.
So, because I use it through, I guess it's a good question because no, I don't think there are any secrets. I think so many other things come into play, and that's what makes it all so challenging. I was just speaking to someone yesterday who told me that if he had met his wife when he was in college, they never would have matched up because they were very different people then. They wanted different things out of life. And it wasn't until later on that they met, like 10 years later, that, that, that they were able to actually match up with each other. And so I think a lot of it has to do with timing. A lot of it has to do with being in the right place at the right time, which makes it very challenging. And I do think that sometimes it's opening your mind a little bit to some the potential of what you didn't think, could be. I will say most of my matches are ones that were not necessarily expected matches, meaning they were either long distance or they were not from the same religious background, or someone grew up religious and someone is religious now but didn't grow up, and someone always thought that they'd marry someone that they went to camp with or that knew the camp system or knew the yeshiva system, and this was someone who grew up in the Midwest and now they're living in New York, like, or that people never thought. I guess I'm a creative thinker when it comes to matchmaking, and it's not just like, well, you're Jewish, you guys should meet. It's sometimes like, you know what, you guys just actually, you should meet, like just meet and see what happens. And so I'm kind of like that, kind of like, it's a cup of coffee or it's a phone conversation and see. And sometimes couples that I think are like the perfect fit do not work out. And other ones that I think, okay, give it a shot, are seriously dating now. So, a part of it, it just, I don't know. I don't have any tricks of the trade. Sometimes it'll be like, you know what, they like Broadway tunes and you like Broadway tunes. You know what, you guys should have just like, so meet and talk about Broadway tunes and see if, something, I guess I mean, I say that sort of flippantly. Obviously, there has to be more, lining up, but sometimes it will be just something as, you know what, you guys both like working with, Mazone, or you both like working with, you both were Camp Simcha counselors. You guys should just meet. And I just feel like sometimes you just have to take, like, my kids and our congregation used to always joke because I would spend Kiddush. Now, too, my husband's a rabbi in Detroit. It's a smaller community, but I spend most of Kiddush saying, have you met this one? Have you met this one? You should meet this one. And they joke, like, you wear glasses, you guys should meet. And, so they make fun of me like that. But I also, sometimes it'll be like, you guys are looking to get involved in something and you guys are involved in something, you guys should meet. And it's not just singles. I've gotten people connected who, one's on the board and one's looking to get involved in organizations. So a lot of connecting people, not just singles, but like just feeling like people sometimes get so stuck in their own social group or their own demographic group that I just feel like I think the world works better when you know people who are older and younger, and you never know who's going to have a kid who can babysit for your kid and who's going to be driving to in our case up to Ann Arbor and can take something for your kid. Like, you just gotta always mix up the pot and just always introduce people, I think. So we try to do that around our Shabbat table, try to do that with matchmaking. Like, you just never know what good can come out from it.
Right, that's amazing. It's networking. It really is networking.
Exactly. And networking for, for jobs, for, I'm always trying to connect people. And singles, I have a platform, but I'm connecting people in a lot of worlds all the time. At this point, we've lived in 3 different communities. We've lived in Riverdale, we lived in Chicago, and we live in Detroit. So, and we like communities. So we've gotten to know people in different communities. And so we try to share the community and share the network.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And matchmaking is such a wonderful time-honored Jewish tradition, and you really get to know each person individually, and then you help them find their bashert, the person that they're really intended to marry. I know part of your work entails dealing with couples to help them navigate their religious differences. Sometimes either in dating or marriage, the man or the woman might become more religious than their partner. sometimes a woman might want to cover her hair or dress more modestly, and the man might want to start davening in minyan 3 times a day. In one way or another, one person wants to elevate their observance and the other person wants to either remain the same or even decrease their level of observance. And that can be really, really challenging, whether you're dating or married, for any relationship. And I just was curious to see how you help couples navigate through this challenge.
So I will actually add another level to that, which is parents. How do you talk to parents when their kids are getting more observant
True.
or less observant, or in their couple, the kids don't want to send their kids to day school, or they want to send, like, how do you navigate that? And I think a lot of it is about communication, and going back to, we'll start with singles, I guess, and then go from there. Is sometimes it'll be like they're on a different religious level. And I mean, I still deal with a lot of couples who one is observant and one is not so observant. And either they meet they're at an event, or they meet at a bar, or they meet somewhere and they click, and there's so much good there. But there are a lot of religious differences. And so, and often, I'm speaking to them when it's fairly far on into the relationship, where they realize there's a lot of good here and I don't want to give this up. But what am I supposed to do? I keep Shabbat and they don't. So for now, we've been able to navigate that, or I keep kosher and they don't. How do we navigate that? And so I spend a lot of time when talking to them, of trying to figure out, like, what are your non-negotiables and what are the things that you can be more flexible on. So some of the couples I've worked, a kosher home, that's a non-negotiable. So when you are, and I encourage people to talk about these things somewhat early on in the relationship, because if you already know that you are dating someone who does not keep kosher, or does not keep kosher even to the same level, it's not something that you want to spring on them, once you are seriously dating. These are things that should be talked about, earlier on. Now, it might be, like, look, and I guess you want the conversations and the communication to be, I understand that we are not on the same level. These are things that are important to me. How can we make this work? So like I said, the two main issues that usually come up are Shabbat and kashrut. And so one couple that I was talking to, he was not Shomer Shabbat at all, and she was. And so they, we had gotten together on, Saturday nights, sometimes she would walk over early, and then they'd go out afterwards, that they were being, and I said, well, what is it that you really want? Like, what, because he's not going to all of a sudden say, sure, I'll be Shomer Shabbat. He's never really observed Shabbat. He doesn't even know. So start with, what, I want you to come with me to Shabbat meals. That's a great way of us, getting to know, each other in this way. It's a nice way for you to get to know some of my friends. And see, this is actually like Shabbat dinner is great. Like that could be a really, it's not like, oh, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Show some of the positive things, like Shabbat dinner is very nice. And then you can say, what, Shabbat lunch is great. This is not someone who, I guess I'm thinking of in one case of a pretty extreme example. They were a wonderful couple. He didn't read Hebrew. He grew up Jewish, but, really not connected. And she went to shul every Shabbat, and he, great guy, and they were great. And I remember saying, like, he may not be ready to be sitting in shul each week, so why don't you say, why don't you walk over, during Kiddush, and let's go to, Shabbat lunch together, like start with, like, you can do your own thing Shabbat morning, but let's meet up and spend the afternoon together. We'll go for a walk, we'll have Shabbat lunch, we'll, like, let him see that Shabbat is not just, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. But like, this is the time where we really spend time together. We play our board games together. We really, see some of the positives. And I said, at some point you can say, look, I would love for you to come sit and I know it's not your thing, but I want you to at least experience something that's very important to me. And I'd like you to come, and I know, I'm going to sit you next to a friend of mine. You don't have to do anything. No one's going to be watching, but I'd love you to just see what it's like. And this was after a lot of discussion, and in the end he did, and he didn't come every week, but he understood that this was something that was important to her, and so he was willing to compromise on that. her willing to compromise was really realizing that he's not going to come to shul every morning. And he's not going to come every Friday. He's not going to start davening all the time. But it got to the point where where she was able to say, look, at least come sometimes. And he was at the point where he could say, I'm happy to come sometimes because this is important to you. And so I think when you're communicating, now that doesn't work on every situation, but I think a lot of times it can work if, you say, in, some of the couples that I worked with on, kashrut, it would be like, look, the house, I would tell either the man or the woman, look, the house is just, in order for me to be able to eat in my home, in order for my family or my friends, but you know what, what you do when you are out, on a business lunch, if that's what's, I'm not going to tell you, you can't do that. And I feel like that's where people have to be a little bit more flexible, where the more observant person has to understand that they are marrying someone who does not value kashrut in the same way that they do. And the person who doesn't keep kosher has to understand, the person that I'm marrying, kashrut is really important to them. So I think like that's where these conversations are important earlier on. If someone says, look, there is no way that I am not bringing, cheeseburgers into my house, I just can't do that, then they're probably not so flexible about other things also. And so, if that's where someone is, I think that there's probably more there that's not working than just whether they can bring a cheeseburger into the house or not. So I think that it's a lot about communication, like figuring out what are core things that I cannot do. And someone might say, look, I cannot not go to non-kosher restaurants. I work in business. Everything we do is based in restaurants, and so the person can say, I just can't go with you then. And so if you want me to come with you, and then let's find a kosher option. And if you're in a community without kosher options, then let's figure out, can we do it for coffee? Can we have them at our house? Can we meet somewhere? Can we cater in? Let's be flexible and let's be creative about how we can make things work. And so I think I'm all about like flexibility and creativity. And I think it has to come on both sides, realizing that if you are with someone who, feels very passionate about these things, you have to know that about them. If someone believes that, again, day school or how you vacation, how, I know people have different rules on vacation. Like sometimes, it's a lot of navigating and communication. So that might have been too long of an answer. Or I didn't cover what.
No, there was, I like it because it's very, very thorough. It's exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm looking to help people who are in this situation, or who may soon find themselves, God forbid, in this situation. It's a really, really challenging thing. And, exactly along those lines, I mean, many couples feel like they're the only ones who have problems and issues. They're the only ones who are fighting, but the reality is that every couple goes through their own challenges that actually have the potential to help them become better people once they surpass their challenge. And I love this anecdote that you were saying about the religious, one man was religious and the woman wasn't. And I was wondering if maybe you have any other real life anecdotes from your own personal life or your own experiences working with couples, not necessarily like a religious issue, but just an issue where people, a couple had to really work through it and they grew through it.
So, I guess, yes, I'm like, there's so many. I'm trying to think of what are some of the other ones. I guess one of the other ones that comes to mind was that there was a couple. I did not fix them up. But we were close with them. And they both grew up observant. They both grew up from, and their lives had taken different paths. And so they were not, they still they kept a strictly kosher home because of their families. They were a little more flexible outside their home. But it came to choosing a school for their kids. And one said, I want public school. I want, I believe in public school, and I want, I didn't get to meet people from all different backgrounds. I want to, meet people from all different backgrounds. I want my kids to meet people from all different backgrounds, and that's very important to me. And the other person in the couple said, what, but I want my kid to, yes, I've made different choices, but I made those choices from an educated point, and I want my kid to at least understand, Judaism. I want them to be able to make a choice, and I don't feel like they'll be able to make that choice if they aren't in a Jewish environment. And so we spent a lot of time talking to them. And in the end, we said, well, then why don't you look around? They were in a community that had multiple day schools. And we said, find a school that matches, that has a community that's similar to where you are, that has, that's going to have the joy that that you both have, you both associate parts of Judaism with joy. That's the parts that you embrace. So find a school that matches the joy that you want and that matches the hashkafa that you want, which is, one that's steeped in Judaism, but that also embraces the world. And, try that. And then find other ways that you can, involve your kids in things that they can meet other people through sports, through volunteering, through other things. And so they found a day school, and both parties are very, very happy with the day school that they chose. I think it's a lot about figuring out, like, what is it that you really want, or what is it that you are afraid of? And if you say, well, I'm afraid that my kids are going to be sheltered and aren't going to meet anybody, well, then you do have to make an effort to make sure. Now, whether that's for us, you can say like that, maybe that's at your Shabbat table. You make sure to invite people from different backgrounds to your Shabbat table. Or you get involved in activities where you aren't just meeting people who are just like you. And it's funny, I think that that's sort of, it goes back to matchmaking a little bit. Like, you have to make sure that I encounter a lot where someone, grew up observant. Now they aren't so observant, but they know that they want to be, observant when when they get married and when they're raising kids. And so, they will put in their profile, I like to go to bars. I don't go to Minyan every day, but I'm looking for a woman who wants to cover her hair and, whatever. And, I kind of say to them, like, you kind of have to, a person who says, I want to cover my hair, I want, the whole list of things, you aren't going to be the person that they're looking for, because you are not someone who's, you have to kind of be realistic and honest with where you are, and with, to say like, well, I want to find someone who goes to, the beach in a bikini now, but when they are married, they're going to, be, tznius and dress up. Like, yes, people out there like that. But I think it's just narrowing the field. If you say, I'm someone who goes to Minyan and then goes to the beach, or I want to, like, you have to kind of be the person that you're looking for is going to want to find, if that makes sense. That,
Yes.
You have to look at who you are, and the kind of person that you are looking for isn't necessarily going to be wanting you if you are not doing what it is that you want that person with. You understand
Yes,
what
I totally get it. Yes. And that makes sense. That makes sense. Exactly. Because people, people look to see how's this person going to be when I marry them?
Right.
What's going to be down the line with this person? So that's
Right.
really, really important.
Right.
And I mean, I know that in addition to, we talked a lot about matchmaking and, couples and everything. And I know that you're very much also involved in Hachnasat Orhim, which is specifically having a wide variety of Shabbat guests at your table, which is in itself a type of matchmaking, a type of networking,
Right.
and it's such a beautiful mitzvah to bring Shabbat guests to your home and have them at your table. And I am just so interested in hearing about some anecdotes that happen at your Shabbat table. Like, that could be a very interesting place for things to happen at the Shabbat table. Incidentally, I actually met my husband at a Shabbat table.
Oh.
Yes.
See, I always feel like, I think the model of meeting someone at a Shabbat table is because you don't look at your checklist of things. You don't know, I work with people who are like, I will not date someone who's over 33. But if you're at a Shabbat table, the first thing you do when you meet people is you don't ask them how old they are. And so you're not going to know if they're 35 and you've had an amazing meal, and, they were so funny, and there was so, like, I think, or you don't know where they went to school. You don't necessarily know, some of the things that you might have said no if someone called you and said, I have this person, meet them. Like, I think a Shabbat meal allows people to kind of, on a relaxed way, to get to know each other. And you like, she was reading the most interesting books, and she just had so many interesting things to say. Or she was telling us about this great trip that she went on. Like, I just think like people are more relaxed. And so when someone, like they're not going to know that she has plans to move back to Chicago as soon as she's done, and that's a deal breaker for him, or like that's a thing. Like at least it gives people a chance to meet. So we've had so many interesting people at our table, and I think some of the things that we've been the most surprised about are similar to the things that I find surprised in matchmaking. Is that we've had meals that we've like sometimes, I mean, we've done all different things. We sometimes do themes, like we'll have like over, doctors, and we'll invite like, medical students and doctors and residents and retired, and just kind of like, kind of hope that things, take, or just people, meet. We did a meal that was great about couples that were expecting. They were all pregnant couples. It was a great meal. That one was wonderful. We've had some other meals that really kind of flopped. We're like, they should meet, it all should work. And it really didn't. Like people just, it didn't take. And I think our biggest surprise is that the meals that we are like almost the most nervous about, because there's no cohesion or no, like theme, it's just kind of like a very random group, are sometimes our best meals, because we realize we can't predict what's going to happen. So we had this guy who was visiting when we were in Chicago. He was visiting the community, and he had visited before, and he was a talker. He just did not listen. He just kept talking and talking and talking. And we always had him over, and we always had to kind of figure out, okay, who were we going to put him next to that could tolerate, how was this going to work? And we ended up having, we didn't seat him. He ended up sitting next to one of our other guests, brought a brother, and they sat next to each other, and they had the best time. Like they were talking the entire time. They exchanged, numbers. They got together after Shabbat. And here we were so nervous about who was this person. And like, we couldn't have predicted that he was going to like, they had a friendship that still goes on, that they were like, they met at our table, and we were nervous, but we could have put him somewhere else. And that, might not have gone so well. I think some of our most meaningful times are when we've had older people and younger people. And I know that sometimes, like when someone sits next to someone and they're like, oh gosh, what are we going to talk about? How is this going to be? And we actually had a Seder where we had some older people and some younger people, and they were sitting next to each other. And the older person, we do a lot of our Shabbat meals are spent doing introductions. Like we go around, we have everyone introduce themselves, and there's always a question. And so it's a way for everyone to at least get to know someone, at the, so I'll have one more thing on that. So in any case, the young person was sitting next to this older couple, and they started telling them about like Pesach when they were in the Holocaust. He was a Holocaust survivor. And so this young person then stopped the Seder, like, this was like after the meal. And he's like, I think we should all listen to this person talk about some of his experiences, like we knew that he was a Holocaust survivor. We weren't focusing on him. And this young person said, I think we should all listen. And so we took him, and this Holocaust survivor who, really like spent the next probably half hour telling us about his experiences in Pesach during the Holocaust. And it was one of the most moving Seders that any of us had been to. And it was all because this young person, took a moment to ask this, the older gentleman about his, it came out organically that it was an incredibly moving experience to have that. The other thing is, I was saying during introductions, like our table was very, very long in Chicago. So really you could sit here and there and not know the person. So, but we did introductions. And so someone was talking about that, they grew up and their father was a rabbi and in, Connecticut. And this other person said, wait, your father was my rabbi growing up. And they they hadn't seen each other in probably like 30 years, didn't know that they wouldn't have recognized by name, by mirror. And so like, I just feel like, we've had, it's not so much, we've had like some, great people, but I think the more things are just like the natural things that happen at the table where people get to, just meet people that they might not have met, in another situation. And so I think those are the most beautiful moments, at least for us, where, where our table, I guess I will say now, like my husband is the director of the JCRC AJC, which is the Jewish communities basically interacting with the rest of the community. So often at our table, we'll have, people from very different backgrounds. And, we had one student, an African-American student, who was telling us, about, he was in college and what a sacrifice it was. He was the first person to go to college from his family, and how many jobs he was working to enable him to go to college. And so he also, and he was telling us how delicious the food was and whatever. And, so I actually made some comment like, oh, well, would you like to take some home? He goes, I'd love to take some home. He's like, that will mean that and like that I will get to have a nice dinner. He says, I don't always have, enough money to have, he says, I'm not starving by far, but he's like, to have a dinner like this. And I think, for my kids to be able to see like something that they take for granted, that of course they're going to go to college and, they're going to, they have food on the table. Like, I think it was really quite remarkable for them and for the other people at our table, like to just kind of take a step back and say, things that we take for granted, like the people that we are usually around, who that there's a whole world out there of other people. Or, my husband's a rabbi, so he meets with other pastors and ministers and, imams. And so we've had them over for Shabbat, and to hear them tell some of their stories, it's just fascinating. Like, there's just a world out there. And I think, when we have people from our community, they our community and introduce them to, other people who are not necessarily part of our community, they usually thank us afterwards. And they're like, it's just so, there's a whole world out there of people to get to know. And, so it's less, I guess, about people. And I guess just like that people really, it's important, I think, to meet people who are a little bit outside your social circle or outside your demographic or outside that you might not necessarily meet.
I totally agree. And that way you get another person's point of view. You learn something that you would have never even known to even to ask a question.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and speaking of questions, I'm actually curious, what has been like your favorite icebreaker question that you've asked your Shabbat guests?
I'll tell you, it's so funny. Our favorite, which like my husband loves flying. He loves airplanes. He loves airports. And so we said, you know what? Let's go around and ask people what is their favorite airport. And like, it was kind of like this whim of like, we do introductions twice a Shabbat, every Shabbat. We're like, and it's often like a book that you're reading, or your favorite parsha, or your favorite biblical character, or your favorite, I don't know, we try to do things that are not just like your favorite ice cream, because like we want something that's a little more meaty than that, but not so meaty that people are going to feel uncomfortable. So we did, what is your favorite airport? And we were blown away by everyone had some experience and story about why an airport was there. Like it was actually just because it was more than just like, Iceland, that's my favorite. But it was like it was a much richer question than we had thought. Some of our other favorite ones are like, what's your, when we have someone who, we live in Detroit now. So when we have someone new to Detroit, we have everyone go around and say, what is something that this person should not miss in Detroit? Or, what was your favorite vacation? Or where is one place that you've always wanted to travel? Or, we try to do like around graduation, we do a lot of like graduation meals, and we have everyone go around and tell who was a teacher that had an influence on them. Or, and so we always just try to do something. So, I mean, the teacher one is always a good one also. In fact, one of our teacher ones, someone said a teacher, and someone else said, that's my aunt. And they grew up in different places. And
such a small world. You never know who you're sitting right next to. You have no idea.
You never know.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love that. This is such a creative way to network and like to meet people. And like you said, it's not just for singles, but just for networking or for friendship, for life, just to meet new people and open your own horizons. And I think it's just a beautiful thing. Thank you so much. This is great. And thank you again really for taking the time to join us, America's Top Rebbetzins. We really, really appreciate you being here. This has been a really fun interview. And May our learning today bring a refuah shalema to Daniel Ben Ilana. And if anyone in the audience has any questions or comments about the podcast, or if anyone would like to sponsor a podcast, please email us at atrebbetzins@gmail.com. That's atrebbetzins@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you should have a lot of hatzlacha in everything that you do. So thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you.